listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you. I've given Myra the time off because what I'm going to look at today, you're going to think could very well be political, and it's not. I want this to be more of a public service announcement type of thing because I heard something the other day that was troubling, and we'll get to that in a second. If you are new here, I don't always do this kind of thing, but this is important. And if you are new, please check out GiveGod90.com, and don't forget about the books there as well. I heard something the other day, and I looked the article up that it came from. So that's interesting. And regular listeners will know that I try to go back to the source as original as possible in whatever I look at. And what I found out may cause some of you some trouble. Let's just put it that way. Now, while I am primarily going to be speaking to the U.S. audience, the United States audience, folks from around the world, I'm going to say it this way. A lot of people want to come to the United States, and that's fine. I know a lot of people who have come to the United States. Some of them, left places where they were oppressed, persecuted, and they came here. I've known people from European countries, Eastern European countries, Africa, and I actually worked with a gentleman who escaped Cuba. So I'm very familiar with people who come to the United States, and all of them have one thing in common. They all say that when they come here, they have to work twice as hard to have half as much. That kind of surprises me, to be honest with you. So, don't think that coming to the United States is going to end all of your problems. Sometimes they just begin, and what I'm going to talk about today is a situation especially for believers, Christians as well as Jews, and this is troubling to me because it comes from something we did as a result of 9/11. We have put in place in the United States an agency that oversees terrorism. And one of the things that comes from that is we have agencies that are designed to look at different activity and say, well, that person is an extremist. That person can cause problems. Here's somebody we need to be careful of. And one of those agencies is known as the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And here's what's troubling. When I read the article that I read, the headline was obviously a clickbait article title. And it said, does purchasing a Bible red flag you? And when I started digging into this, one of the places I went was specifically to the judiciaryhouse.gov website. And it's amazing because there are a number of possible of factors for red flags. Now, a red flag is a signal that an activity or transaction might be suspicious. Observing a red flag should trigger some question, as is the amount of the transaction unusually large for the typical consumer? Does the customer make the same or similar transactions frequently? Does the type of transaction seem unusual for the customer? These are the things they're looking for. And specifically what they're looking for is laundering money, funneling money to illegal organizations and that kind of thing. But it's interesting that on January 17th of 2024, the House Judiciary Committee put out a press release. And in this press release, let me quote, and again, this is from January 17th, 2024. Quote, Washington, D.C. New documents obtained by the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government reveal that the federal government flagged terms such as MAGA and Trump for financial institutions if Americans use those phrases when completing transactions. Individuals who shopped at stores like Cabela's or Dick's Sporting Goods or purchased religious texts like the Bible may also have had their transactions flagged. This kind of pervasive surveillance, financial surveillance carried out in coordination with and at the request of federal law enforcement into Americans' private transactions is alarming and raises serious concerns about the FBI's respect for fundamental civil liberties. In light of these revelations, Chairman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, has requested transcribed interviews from Peter Sullivan, Senior Private Sector Partner for Outreach in the Strategic Partner Engagement section of the FBI, and Noah Bischoff, former Director of the Office of Stakeholder Integration and Engagement of the Strategic Operations Division of Financial Crimes Enforcement, end quote. What stood out is if you shopped at a sporting goods store, whether it's Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, Dick's Sporting Goods, even if the only thing you did was you went in there, to buy a new jacket. Let's say you went in there to buy a cookbook. Maybe, for Dick's Sporting Goods, you went in there to purchase sporting equipment for your child's sports team. Individuals, again, I'm going to quote this sentence from the press release. Individuals who shopped at stores like Cabela's or Dick's Sporting Goods or purchased religious texts like the Bible may also have had their transactions flagged, end quote. Why should this be troubling? This should be troubling because now individuals who purchase religious material are being watched as if they're criminals. So what can we do? We need to alter, let me rephrase that. We may possibly need to alter the way we purchase some things. We may need to pay cash. Don't write a check. Don't use your credit card. Right? And it's easy to do. Just stop by the bank, cash a check, stop by the ATM, withdraw whatever you need when you're going to these places, and you will avoid being flagged because they can't track you at that point. And I know, you're thinking, but I'm not doing anything wrong. And you're not. You are not doing anything wrong if you go to Dick's Sporting Goods, or you go to any sporting goods store, or you go to any place that may happen to sell firearms or ammunition. Most hardware stores sell that stuff now. You might not be doing anything wrong at all. Everything you're doing may be perfectly innocent. The problem is evil people are trying to persecute you simply for buying a Bible, simply for buying your child a basketball, whatever it might be. You think about it. What happens if you go to an online store and you purchase a Bible for a worship class, or worse? Maybe you purchase a case of Bibles to give away because that's something you like to do. Oh, that's a big purchase. We've got to watch this person. They could be an extremist. We've got to watch this person. They could be the enemy. Maybe think about this. Maybe you're new to being a believer and you find a worship community that you enjoy and you write a check to that particular church, synagogue, whatever it might be. Is it going to be flagged by one of these questions? Does this type of transaction seem unusual for the customer? You know, there's a lot of churches now who accept credit cards for their tithes, their church taxes, I call it. And you can have a recurring charge every week if you want to set it up that way. Does that type of activity seem abnormal for this customer? If somebody at the bank says they've never written a check to this church before, maybe somebody at the bank looks at your credit cards and say, wait a minute, all of a sudden they're giving to a religious organization. They've never done that before. What's going on? Maybe we should report this. You know who they report it to? Yeah, they report it to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And it becomes part of their suspicious activity report. It amazes me. It amazes me that in the United States, an innocent transaction can be flagged for review. These innocent transactions is your money, the way you want to spend your way, on the things that you want to spend your money on, that could cause you more trouble in the future. More trouble than you realize. And when I'm thinking about this, I look back and I thought, in the Bible, I know there are lessons of people who just did innocent things. But the king, who was the government at the time, got jealous. Look at David. He didn't do anything that upset the people. The person he upset was the government, King Saul, and it caused him a lot of problems. Elijah, Isaiah are other examples. People that we consider righteous simply by doing the things that the Creator asked them to do, but they got into a lot of trouble with their governments. Do you realize that whenever a believer does anything, it's going to be scrutinized by unbelievers? You know, modern times. We don't have to look back far. Tim Tebow, basically displayed his faith and got in a lot of hot water. I mean, he was in trouble for months. People still talk about him. Other sports figures do the same thing. And you might think, well, that person's famous. They're never going to come after me. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're famous or not. The world is full of evil. Shouldn't be news to you. Shouldn't be news to you at all. And if you are so complacent in your thinking that that person was famous, all I'm doing is buying a Bible for my granddaughter. That purchase, if it appears unusual or abnormal to someone in your bank, and they report it, it doesn't stop with the financial crimes enforcement. It gets reported as suspicious activity. Now, how many other alphabet agencies do you think have access to that? There's one that I can think of, and it should make you very nervous, and that is the Internal Revenue Service. And I know that these government agencies, we're not worried about the small individual. If you're not worried about the small individual, why is the House Judiciary Committee worried about it? You know, I never thought, I never thought for a moment that I would have to say that we should be wary of a government that is so restricted by its Constitution as the government in the United States. But we need to be very, very wary and very aware. There are some very evil people who have gained a lot of power in the government, and they apparently are willing to sacrifice everything for evil, and that includes persecuting believers publicly. And they do this using your financial transactions. And don't think that this is exclusive to the United States either. There are a lot of countries around the world that watch the purchases that people make very, very closely. According to the Public Religion Research Institute, about 70% of Americans claim to be Christian, 1% Jewish, and 1% Muslim. These folks are the ones who are buying religious material. Many of these folks are the ones out there buying, sporting goods, clothes, and equipment for their children. That's a whole lot of people who might choose to either buy a Bible, buy a Quran, whatever. They may choose to buy a new soccer ball, basketball, baseball, football, whatever that might be. That's, over 70%. Not quite 3/4 of the people in the United States. Now, I need to be careful. I'm not saying if you buy a Bible that you're going to get in trouble with the IRS. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you risk causing trouble for yourself with any number of government agencies. I know it's far less convenient to stop by the bank and cash a check when you can just reach in your wallet and pull out your credit card, maybe your debit card, whatever. But I want you to think about this. If they are willing to flag a transaction from a bookstore, if they're willing to flag a transaction of you buying a ping pong ball at a sporting goods store, think about that. This isn't just about flagging your transactions. This is about publicly persecuting people who choose to acknowledge their Creator. This is nothing less than public persecution. And if you live in the United States, be careful. Do whatever you need to do to do whatever you need to do to watch yourself. Be wary. Be aware that there are people out there that are watching you in ways you've never dreamt of. And see what happens in the next couple of years. They're looking into this as that. This is the House Judiciary Committee looking into the bureaucratic agencies in the United States as if they're criminals now. And that's a good thing, because these same bureaucratic agencies have been persecuting you, and chances are you didn't even know about it. When I read this, I was upset. I was mad, as you can probably tell. And I try to stay as up to speed on these things as I can. And this one slipped by me. Evil will persecute you any way it can. And apparently now that includes buying Bibles. Just be aware of what's going on in your world. Be watchful, be obedient, and live the way you're designed to live. Hopefully, you will take this in the spirit it is made to be, just as a public service announcement for you, so that you're aware of what's going on. It's just another way evil will persecute you. Until Monday, I wish you many, many blessings, everyone. I know that we all need them.